So, Jak and Daxter PS4 is out, and oh, how glorious it looks! But looks can be deceiving, my friend. Is this really the lovely little whoopee cushion we've come to love and expect from a PS2 and PS4 port? Or are we going to be sorely disappointed like we were with the Vita? Well, let's find out. I'll start this off by saying that the game looks incredible, probably even better than the HD collection, which is insane considering nothing was even done but a bit of anti-aliasing and upping the resolution. You can see the fabrics in the characters' clothes, eyes shine, textures pop, luscious colours, water actually looks like a water HD collection, and I'm even noticing tiny little intricate details I've never seen before. Overall, the game just looks glorious! And it is by far the best looking PS2 game on PS4 at the moment. A few PSAs before I get into the more technical stuff. I played this game on a launch PS4 on a 1080p TV. I was playing the PAL version of the game from the European Irish PlayStation Store, so everything I say here could be completely different in the US version of the game, which I've yet to try. One thing I should also mention is the game does not allow you to invert the camera. This was not in the original game either and was not added until Jak 3. Some people may be thrown off by this as it was added in the HD collection to all 3 games. It was fine for me, but I can see some people having problems with it. Also, 60Hz is not turned on by default and needs to be manually switched every time you boot up the game. However, while playing in 60Hz does give you 60 frames per second and more fluid gameplay, it sacrifices some of the graphical fidelity and seems to be slightly more unstable than 50Hz. So choose whichever you'd prefer, it's really just down to preference. The game will be set to 16:9 by default. This is fine, the original game had a 16:9 mode, a pretty good one as well, but the game was clearly focused and designed to be played in 4:3 displays, so playing it in 16:9 can cause some extra pop-in. 4:3 mode, however, seems to be absolutely perfect. My personal preference is 60Hz and 4:3, and it's what I would recommend if you don't mind black bars on the side of your screen. Okay then, now that all that shit's out of the way, let's go! The first thing you will notice immediately the second you gain control of Jak is the slight delay. Delay in the PS4 controller was unavoidable, so I can't really blame the port for this. It takes a while to get used to, but it's perfectly fine and playable. The port seems to struggle from multiple frame rate issues, which is a real shame considering how stable and smooth the frame rate was in the original game. The following are examples of these frame rate issues being played in 60Hz mode. Keep in mind that some frame rate issues may vary depending on if you were playing at 60Hz or 50Hz. Most of the zoomer levels suffer from mild frame dips in some way or another. The Fire Canyon seems to suffer from both frame pacing and frame rate issues throughout the entire level. It's playable, but it's quite distracting. The same can be said for the precursor basin, making some of the more difficult power cells quite annoying. Mountain Pass seemed to cope the best, only slowing down near the end, killing the Demolition Lurker. Lava Tube was also good, with frame rate only mildly dipping when explosions occurred. Unfortunately, frame rate for the 2 main bosses of the game are probably the worst thing about this port. Claw runs at about 50 to 20 frames a second constantly, where Golem Maya, who are without a doubt the most disappointing thing about this port, struggled throughout the entire battle to get above 20 FPS and was constantly fluctuating, making this normally very enjoyable boss an absolute pain in the arse and literally gave me a headache. The good news, however, is that these are really the only bad spots for frame rate. The game runs at a solid 60 or 50 frames per second most of the time, and really the only places I noticed a dip were in the Forbidden Jungle while you were charged up with the Blue Eco in the temple, and the Loft Across your city when sliding down the things. Other than that, the port's frame rate is solid, and I really hope that Sony patches the few instances where the frame rate is a bit bleh. Other than that, this port is pretty damn accurate, with only a few graphical issues such as a few platforms where it doesn't really know whether to load in a high-res or low-res texture. I mean, it's a ridiculous nitpick, as are the rest of the little tiny graphical hitches and technical issues that I'm not even going to mention. On a final note, the trophy list is identical to the PS3 version, which is fine because the PS3 trophies were near perfection. So, my closing thoughts. This port is really a tough one to summarise. I mean, do I think it's a good port? Yes. Do I think it is better than the PS2 version? Of course not. Is it better than the PS3 port? Now, this is the one where I'm conflicted. I mean, in many ways, yes, but in many others, no. I mean, while the PS4 version does not have any noticeable gameplay issues, the technical difficulties really drag it down for me. If I were to personally choose between the two, I would pick the PS3 version to play. However, if Sony can patch the PS4 port and fix the problems I've mentioned here, I honestly believe that the PS4 port could be the definitive version of the Precursor legacy, possibly even trumping the PS2 version. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this helpful. If there was anything I missed or something you have a problem with, then be sure to scream at my face in the comments.